Record. So welcome to the live Oracle 3. Oh, what a week. I've been really feeling our last meeting that we had on ways that we can live in a more soul connected way and be, in certain places and spaces, acknowledging that we do have a soul and that we need to connect to it in order to live a more deeply fulfilled life. And so I sat this week with my intention of what do I speak about this week that leads from that. And you know what I'm like, I like to pack everything in and always have a lot to speak about. And this week's no different. I'm just looking at my crib sheet. But what I wanted to really speak about is connected to what we've already spoke about, like mind, body, soul. What gets in the way of that? That's important for us to acknowledge, isn't it? What gets in the way of getting into a deeper soul connection? Because it's all fair and well of saying, oh, let's live a more soul connected life. But it's not always that easy. I particularly have been in connection with soul this week, but in a really kind of like feeling way, a deep opening for me to come into deeper emotions and going through like quite a difficult personal time. And I do feel my soul when I'm in a deep space of, suffering or things that are not going my way, which it's been like me that for me this week. And a whole lot of questioning, like what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? What work do we need to bring out? What does the collective need? Am I being of deep service? Am I living my life correctly? Am I too focused on being of service and neglecting other things? So all that's been going on in my own psyche as well. And Tuesdays are a day that I meet with my women as well who are doing the online course. We had a really quite deep discussion about feminine and masculine energy within us. And that led me to think, what are the things that are detracting us from being in a soulful place? And that is healing. And my whole life has been about this. It's been in search of this because I met the spiritual. So as soon as I began to realize that spirituality was something that was deeply within my kind of being and that I wanted to seek in life, the healing path began to show itself to me. Well, if I'm to seek soul and spirit, I've got to heal. I've got to go to those places that I don't particularly want to go to, and the places that I feel are sore, and the places that I don't really also want to know about, that I pushed back to the recesses of my mind, or that my psyche had forgotten because it would have been too much for me to deal with all at once. So I want to talk about that tonight. I want to get into the question of what keeps us out of getting into the soul and what really gets in the way of us healing to be able to get to soul. So we've already established that the mind is one thing that keeps us in a out of soul connection, that space where we're overthinking all the time. We're living in this rhetoric in the head that goes round and round and round. And as noisy as it is, and as much as it speaks to us, it very rarely brings us outside of that loop. So it gets us into the way of us healing. So I taught that we can come into breath and we bridge ourselves into our body. And that's one of the ways we can actually begin to heal. And I'm going to open up this as number one for being able to heal and come into a soul connection. It's to come into your body. That might sound really obvious, but you would be surprised the amount of people that are out of body. So let me give you an example. When we've had a trauma, we come out of body. When we're in shock, we come out of body. When we're in depression, we're out of body. When we're in anxiety, we're generally out of body. So most of the time, we're literally out of our body. And we know that in some way, doing some breath work, for example, brings us back into the body. I find a really good way of navigating this is to say, like, when did you acknowledge your toes today? You know, the body goes all the way down to the toes, and people generally are up here. And then another way that the body lets itself known to us is through pain. So we might get to a point where we've not even considered our bodies. And then we suddenly find ourselves in pain as a way of the body saying, hey, you forgot about me. So let's go into that and to start to question, first of all, what is your relationship like with your body? And this is a very unique journey for many of us. There may be history of eating disorders, there may be a history of not liking the body, there may be a history of abuse to the body or modification of the body. I just want you to think about your own truthful story in that, particularly as women, because we hold certain imprints from our collective that deeply impact our relationship with our body. So, how often we think about our weight, how often we're depriving ourselves, overindulging, those kinds of things. And they're all a response from the body to say, I need some intention and I need some time from you. But I don't want that done in a shadow way. I don't want that done in a negative way. So I want you to think about that first, your own connection to your body. And then how you use your body, in your day. What is the relationship that the body has with you in your day? And that will be a changing journey. For me, I was a very physical person, teaching physically all the time in the body. And then of later years, less. So I had a deep relationship with my body, often in yoga, many classes a day, that gave me a deep understanding of my body, what it could do, what it couldn't, and what it needed. And so while we're there, I just want you to close your eyes for a second. And I want you to breathe into those feet. Start taking the breath in. And use that breath. Remember that we begin by bridging the mind with the body by using breath. And instantly we can go to the feet and to the toes, and you can give them a little wiggle as you breathe into them. And then you can go into the ankles and the legs and the knees and the thighs. And if this is the first time today that you're actually acknowledging the legs, just say hello. The hips, the sacrum and the belly and the middle back and the rib cage and the heart and the chest and the breasts and the shoulder blades all the way up your back into the arms, into the elbows, the forearms and the hands. And then breathing into the neck and into the face, just feeling your breath coming into this space, into the body. And you can bring the white light into that space. You can call in the divine white light, which is purifying, healing, protective. White light reminds us that we are a body with a breath. And just notice as you acknowledge the body, the divine light and the breath, that you're feeling a different way already. And when was the last time you did this? Talking about things getting in the way of healing. And just ask yourself, if you imagined that you did this every day, just checked in the morning, first thing as you woke up, breathed into the feet, into the body, acknowledged the body and the breath and the white light, how that might make a difference. Into acknowledging body, breath, divinity, protection. Imagine starting off your day deeply embodied, not straight away alarm goes off and you're straight into the head thinking, oh, what have I got to do today? Oh no, not this, blah de blah. But what if the first thing you did was to feel into your feet and into the rest of the body and breathing in and just spent a moment just listening to the body? Hello, body, do you have anything to report? Are there any areas in you that are out of balance, that are in pain, that need attention today? So you're closing the eyes and you're feeling that. You're feeling the spaces in your body that may need to communicate with you. And you're going to try that this week until the next live oracle. You're going to try to come into breathing, connection with your body, asking your body how it is, how it feels. And you're going to start your day off there as a way of healing and a way of connecting that doesn't allow the mind to take over your very first moments of each waking day. And so if anybody's been doing that, then you're free to like pip in and say, yeah, I've been doing that. I've been feeling very different. This is a chance to like put your hands up or mute your microphone, but I will share that I do this every day. I get up and I'm in bed. I'm not in a special prayer room or anything like that. I wake up, I sit up in bed, and the first thing I do before my mind can start to dialogue its constant, incessant chat to me, I breathe and I come into going, taking my intention to the feet, to the ankles, to the legs, just as I've done with you now. I bring divine white light into the body and I just spend a moment in communication with my body. And that must take me all of 5 to 10 minutes. And I'm going to really let you know that that changed things for me massively. I noticed the mind was not as overpowering and that the connection with my healing body was different. I soon was aware that there was tension in my shoulders. So what did that mean for me? Well, maybe I wasn't going to overstretch, or maybe I just needed to move the joints, or, I came into dialogue with my body. So I'm going to ask you all to dialogue with your body, first of all, as a way to healing, as a way to coming into a deeper soul connection. It is known by the ancients and by those that have held deep philosophies into enlightenment and an individuation path that somebody cannot experience soul or enlightenment if they do not live in their body. And it's been observed for, many, many years that generally us Western people are worse. So if you're Western, you're generally less connected to your body, more connected with your mind, because there's many Eastern practices evolved around being connected to the body. So that was the first thing I wanted to share with you, was the body experience. And as a body worker, someone that works with bodies physically and somebody that teaches yoga as well as psychology and spirituality, that I believe that the somatic and the body is actually the most powerful tool. I know that Lenka, who's on the call with us today, has had some body work. She came from Denmark to see me in France, and she had some body work done to try to access the deeper spaces within the psyche and soul. So I don't know whether you want to say anything about that, Lenka. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're there,
yes,
I'd really love
yes,
to
yes,
speak
yes,
to that and how you found it.
As I probably told you lately, I've been searching a long time for some deeper connection with myself, and it was magical for me because it was kind of almost psychedelic experience, just by Colette's touch and breathing and attention to different parts of my body. And it was kind of a bliss, and I have been meditating many years, but I basically never could come so deep as I went with this assisted body work. And for a week ago, I tried in a sacred way cannabis, very, very little, and I got nothing from it. And I was really thinking back how much more is hidden in this work Collette was doing with me. And I'm definitely longing to go back.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And
Collette.
as a doctor, you're a practicing actual medical doctor. So you're seeing lots of cases of people
Ah,
coming in and being really disconnected from the body and disease setting in.
majority people who are sick,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's coming in. Thank you, Lenka. So coming into the body, is super vital, and it can bring us into a deep communication with ourselves and prevent us from getting things like illness. If you're in general connection with the body, feeling into the body, then you'll be very attuned to when something's out of sync and you're not well. And Lenka, for one who's a medical GP, notices that people have just like got very far down the path of illness without even recognizing that's been going in their body. My own uncle like passed away from cancer just at a venue, dropped dead, and was found to have had cancer. This was the disconnection with the body that could have been prevented had we all in this society be more tuned into the physical body and just checking in with it ourselves. And when we're noticing that, then we get medical advice or we get a healer to help us, whichever path we choose. So that's where I wanted to take number one, the body. Number two is in what is getting in the way of us really healing. It's just, I've been doing a lot of work with this with individuals in one-to-ones and also like physically and also online and within the groups that I run with women. It's just acknowledging that we all have wounds and that we are all suffering in some way. And that can be really difficult to get through with some people, to actually go there and say, these are the traumas that have happened for me. These are the wounds, these are the things I'm suffering with. Because we all want to come across as, pretty kind of healed and okay. But that's not the truth for many of us. So I would say the second thing that we should be doing to get closer to our soul and to be on this healing journey is to just be radically honest with ourselves about what wounds we've got, what things we're suffering, and what traumas we have gone through in our lives. So I've said those three quite clearly. So you can write those down, or with this recording, you can go back to them. And what I did and what I ask clients to do is to write those things down, not to share with me, not to share with anyone, but so that they are conscious of the things that are affecting them in their lives. And this is number one red flag I'm going to share with you. Someone says, well, this happened to me, but it doesn't affect me anymore. But that's not the truth. We must remember that the body keeps the score. No matter what happens to us, in my own journey of like miscarriages and ectopic pregnancy and heartbreak and death and all of those things that I believe many other women have suffered too, I know that they're my wounds and I know that I am forever changed by those things. And I like to, on my healing journey, acknowledge that I have healed them or I am in the process of healing them. There are some things like death of family members, death of loved ones that take time. And sometimes, I meet women whose grief is so vast and deep that they'll probably never heal from it, ever. And that's okay if you've lost someone so close to you. You might spend the rest of your life doing that, like just healing that because it's so big to you in your lineage. So I know that people who've lost babies, myself included, that I felt that was a really deep ancestral piece. and that I was healing something for my lineage, and in voicing what that was like and how it affected me and how it had been silenced within my own feminine line. So I want you to see your wounds and sufferings as really important. They're really important to you because they have shaped who you are. They can shape who you will become. And they are definitely sent on this divine map that we get from Creator that says, this is what you are to carry. This is what you are to go through. This is what you are to try to heal from. This is your part in this collective. So knowing what that was and what that is really a way to get closer to the soul. I can honestly say that some of my biggest tragedies, some of my biggest sufferings have really led me close to my soul. And I know that because it's been in those places that I have reached out to Creator. That's when I've realized that there's a divine source, that there's something out there, whatever you wish to call it, because that's your choice. But my choice varies. Sometimes I call it the goddess, sometimes I call it God, sometimes I call it the one mind, sometimes I call it the beloved. But I'm aware that there's this bigger thing than me that I can tap into. And that really helps me and supports me. And from what I've read and I know about the soul journey, is that our soul taps us and taps us in closer to that essence. But we only experience that if we dare to go into the suffering, if we dare to feel it and heal it and pretend and stop pretending that it isn't impacting us. And I really want to mention here that what we're seeing on a collective level was always going to come. The wars that we're seeing, the pandemics, the just the deep trauma that's rumbling through our planet is symbolic that there is some deep wounding and suffering and healing that needs to be happening. And from a Jungian perspective, that is all a collection of every individual on this planet. Everything that manifests is a symbolic collection of all of our issues. So I want you to feel into that. I'm just going to change over my internet for 1 minute because it's just disconnected. Okay, I hope I'm back on. So we're feeling that in the collective, that something needs to heal in order for all this horrificness to stop. What we're seeing is a patriarchal kind of colossal war. And patriarchy is not just made up of men, it's made up of feminine, because as women we hold masculine energy as well. And so we're seeing this war, and this is asking us to look inward and say, where is the war in me? Where am I waging war? And I honestly, through my own individuation process within the Jungian framework, have realized that my inner feminine and masculine don't really get on. They're not really working as a team. That's part of a deep healing process, is to come into the balance of feminine and masculine energy within the self. So I want you to be able to be really deep spiritual seekers, and to start to see these things that are coming in the collective as deep symbols for you on a spiritual journey to take a good look at and say, okay, where can I do my bit with this? So I spent years kind of protesting, doing those things. And I realized that actually the biggest thing I could do to support a collective situation such as this was to do the inner work. So with regards to what's going on, say, for example, because I know it's not the only place, like Israel, Palestine, let's talk about the Congo and Afghanistan and India, there's stuff going on all over. It's all about war and internal war. It's all about separating from the other. They're Jewish, they're Israeli, they're this, they're that. This has gone on since the beginning of time. We're deeply tribal people. We do it. We support our own. We'll get defensive over where we come from and our people without even knowing it. So for me, it was about being conscious of that. Where am I biased again about being a woman against a man? Where am I biased as a straight woman that might be biased against somebody who isn't? You know, where am I separating? Where do I separate myself from non-binary people? Where do I separate myself from people of color? Where do I separate myself from anything that's on this planet? And that opened up a whole door to me is, yeah, I hold some of that in me. And that was taught to me, my own upbringing, my own ancestral lineage had racism in it. I was Scottish and the clans people fought against the English. As Irish. We had a deep infiltration of, during the famine or supposed famine. And so this is all in my blood, this separatism. And so I ask you to just acknowledge wound, suffering, and what's most predominant at our in our collective at the minute is war. And also, write those other things down. I've put climate issues down. How am I contributing to that? Yeah, I could turn off a light. Yeah, I could be more economical. And as my teachers and my mentors have said to me, that looking at the world as a reflection of our own self can really empower people to say, do you know what? I can make a change here because start with me. And then people come to my house and they'll say, why are you doing that? Well, I'm trying not to use electricity, because we're in a bit of a crisis at the minute. Why are you doing that? Yeah, because I realize I'm being quite, separatist against that person. Why was I triggered by that person? Because they're non-binary, because they're different, like whatever. So it opens up a sense of inquiry in me that makes me feel really empowered into my contribution. So if any of that kind of rings home and true to you, maybe you've caught yourself out, maybe you've seen yourself in some of this. Maybe there's a war going on in your own family that you could try and, how do you heal that? Well, my own inner war with my parents has been doing the healing work on me. Yeah. And Rachel's just said, I feel that once we open the box to deep, really deep feelings, it all comes out and we don't know why. Yeah. I think we've capped so much. Like it's so difficult to look at it all, isn't it? It's overwhelming. So we choose to do it bit by bit. So, I'm giving you probably years worth of work here, but it's things to consider. And you could go away from this call and just say, well, that's a load of things, but I'm just going to focus on this one thing because that really resonated with me and maybe I could go there. So I'm going to move on to number 3. And that is the next thing, which is what gets in the way of us healing and what can then take us into a deeper soul space if we do that. And the third thing for me is always comes back to the inner child. So this feeds in, doesn't it, to the last point that I've just shared. And that's investigating our little one inside of us. So I'm going to do a little meditation with you. I want you to just take a big deep breath and just center inside of your body. And those of you that have done this with me before, you're aware that I take you into breath. I bring you into the white light as a protection. So just imagining that the white light is in you and all around you. And I want you to just keep breathing inside the body. Until you reach a part of yourself that feels very childlike. And just take a few minutes to search for that. And as you breathe into that inner child in you, I want you to reach for 3 words that you feel when you feel that part of you. And then I'd like you to just write those in the chat when you're ready to come out in your own time, but just stay with the feeling, stay with that part of you. So for me, it would be scared. There is excitement. And there's a deep curiosity. They're the 3 words I would pull out now when touching that part of me. So scared, curious, excitement. And as you enter them into the chat, or you keep them to yourself, whichever you prefer, I want you to just feel that there are probably a million words in there that the inner child inside of you could express. And I like to go in and just touch 3. I just like to deal with 3. And as I'm seeing the words come in, I'm seeing that they're mixed like mine, that they're also at the opposite, the polar opposite of good, like happy and sad, if we put those words as markers. And that's what the child's like in us. That you know what a child's like. It will be screaming with joy 1 minute, then crying in a deep tantrum the next. The inner child is beautifully in touch with its emotions as they come in. And if we feel those words, we're already connecting to that inner child who's a little bit less controlling than we are as adults. And I'm going to look at those words of mine and I'm going to feel into them. I can make sense of the word scared. I can make sense right now of the word excitement. And so look at your words and see if you can make sense of them. And I love this little exercise, and that's what I want to try and do in the Oracle is just give you little exercises that are easy to make connections with, that you can work with. Sometimes we act like children, and there's nothing like your parents or your partner to bring that part of you up. And I know that when me and my partner are in discord with one another, that we can act very childish. And this is normal in relationship. It's just acknowledging it. And if I can take a minute to just say, okay, what's my child feeling right now? It's like insecure, angry. And I sit with it and say, okay, like I can behave from that point right now into this dysregulated inner child. Or I can take a few breaths and a few moments and come back to this when I'm a bit more regulated and I'm in the center of myself. So I want you to recognize the more that you tune into the inner child, the more that you feel her, I feel her, the more I'm aware of her behavior that comes through me, especially when I'm dysregulated, when I'm triggered, or whether I'm just in a low mood, or whether I'm in a high mood as well. I can be really childish, like you can get to, I have a friend who is, his inner child's very like mine, and we become very childish together. And the inner child in my psychology work, in my spiritual work, is really important for healing, because that is all where it started in the way we behave now, what we're struggling and battling against now, and how we heal it. So the second question you could ask your inner child, connecting to that inner child that we've just made that connection with, because you've given me feelings that shows me you're connected to her or him. What do they need from you right now? And you can also put that in the chat if you wish. It's really nice to have these things come from inside, outside. You can write it in your notebook, but it's really good to have them witnessed. Beautiful. Loyalty to remember that I'm here and I still need you. Beautiful. My inner child feels cheated of time. It needs acknowledgement and closure. And you can do that for the inner child. My inner child at this minute needs to feel safe. And so I can do that as adult Collette. So I just want you to tell that inner child, okay, we'll work with this. Because we know what it's like when the inner child, or a child as an example, is ignored. It gets louder and louder and louder and louder, and that will come out in behavior. So I'm just modeling again a very simple exercise where you could dialogue with the inner child. What do they feel? What do they need? And then the last one I'm going to ask you to ask, which is a biggie, is how is the childish behavior, how is that wounded child still affecting you right now? And then could just put in at the same time, like, she is sad and wants some fun. So for me, that wounded child, for Lenka, is not allowing her to have fun. So she will dialogue with the inner child and say, come on then, what is fun? What can we do? That would be deeply healing for Lenka. That would take Lenka to touch her soul. So acknowledging that not right now, and give yourself an action. So for me, my inner child needs to feel safe. I need to do that. I need to stop relying on anything else for safety. And the inner child is saying to me that, there was places of unsafety with her as a child. So now as an adult, I've got to make sure that I don't let the unsafety come in within my field, and that I keep and hold myself accountable and safe. Okay, so obviously that could have much more time given to it, and I want you to do that after this call. You can choose any of these things to be able to do and to spend some time with. And the inner child, I love dialoguing with her. I love doing some automatic writing, just writing from her and showing how she feels and acknowledging her. And I think if everybody did that in the world, then we probably have such less arguments and a lot less discord, as people realize that their little inner children are having tantrums, feeling unsafe, feel very sad, feel very hurt. And then they could seek what that inner child wants instead of trying to get it from the outside world, which, as we know, can be very disappointing. So the next thing I wanted to discuss about, what gets in the way of us truly healing and how we're unable to touch our soul is tending to the mind, body, and the soul. And I don't need to talk about this because if you were in the last recording, we talked about how we work with mind, body, and soul. And so if you've not seen that, go visit that and look at what it is to be aware that you are of a mind, you are of a body, and that you are of a soul, and which of the three gets more space in you every day. I'm guaranteed everybody's number one, the mind. How can you bring more balance with mind and body, and ultimately mind, body, and soul. But we've got to work through the body to get to soul. So I wanted you to remind you about that. And then I want to do the next one. So I always number these wrong on my paper. I don't know why. 1, 2, 3, 4, number 5. We're in number 5. So number 5 is one I want to speak about, which is what allows us to heal and to get to soul is truth. Now, I do a lot of teaching on truth. It comes up in every single course. In fact, this morning I spent an hour speaking about truth to the women in the womb gatekeepers course who are coming into a space in their womb, that truth is coming up, to speak truth, to have the courage to share truth. And that can be very difficult for many of us. Number one, I'm going to go into the fact that many of your inner children were chastised for telling the truth. How many of you got in trouble when you told the truth? I have this rule in my own house that if people tell the truth, I won't get angry, I won't get mad. But I get angry when the truth has not been told. So I've made that rule in this house because we're teaching children to, that if they tell the truth, they're going to get punished. So we've all had that done to us. So truth becomes a scary thing. Truth becomes something that is persecutory. It becomes something that is punishable. So we've got to heal from that. And we've got to feel, and I'll share this, it's a bit deep, but I know you can cope with it, is that I realize that my animus, which is my masculine principle in my body, holds a vast sword of truth. My inner feminine, she's not that able to do it. But the masculine side of me is able to just speak truth. And it feels like a sword. It feels like he has this sword of light. And when I visualize it as a sword of light, it's easier for me to execute because I feel like, okay, this is going to cut away anything that's dark. So I want you to have a visualization of your truth as something. What is it? Is it a flower? Is it a sword? Is it an arrow? What could your truth be? And I want you to visualize that in your mind right now and see it lit up in light. And whenever it comes to the point that you just need to tell the truth and you're holding back and you're like, oh, I just need to say to that person, you're doing this yourself, or I cannot stand the way you're speaking to me, or anything like that. That I bring the symbol through and I realize that this is a tool of light and that it's going to cut all around me the darkness. It's only going to bring in what aligns with me. And usually the truth comes from a direct expression of feeling. You notice that whenever I did it, and you might be emotional about that. Or I can't live this way anymore. Or you're really annoying me. Or, you grumpy, or whatever it is. So I want you to know that truth, when it's spoken, is super healing. Not only for you, but for the other person who receives that truth, and for the space, whole sacred space around you. And that definitely gives us with some attachment issues problems because we don't like stuff being severed from us and therefore tend to withhold truth in case it breaks something. Our parents' temper normally, or a relationship, or how someone feels about you. But if we don't speak truth, all those things usually are generally come out of alignment anyway and cause us problems later on. And I feel this is a very, very important piece that we as women begin to really grab a hold of. Over the beginnings of time, we have been repressed from speaking. We have repressed ourselves. There's been even instruments created to hold our truth, hold our tongues, stop us talking. So I really want you to feel into that space in you that withholds your truth. And I think the next thing to say about that is truth isn't right or wrong. It's just your truth. It's how you feel. No one, because it comes from a feeling, can't be right or wrong. It just is. So we need to let go of, well, I'm right or you're wrong, or well, I could be wrong. It doesn't matter. The fact is, you've executed the truth, and it comes from the feeling that you're experiencing in that moment or at that time. It might later be called out and said, well, it wasn't really right, was it? It doesn't matter. What matters is you spoke it out. You didn't repress yourself. So I want you to think about where recently you have withheld truth. We haven't spoken out. And I want you to think about why. Why did you withhold truth? And again, if anyone would like to share, they can unmute and talk, or you can post in the chat as well. What is it we're afraid of when we speak truth? Why do we withhold? When we speak our truth, there is no answer. It's not about being right, so we don't invite drama. Great. To avoid hurting someone, but not being true to myself. Yeah, and we hurt ourselves. And usually them in the long run, because we've not been clear about it as well. So I want you to really use that practice. It really helped me. Like my lightsaber comes out now, and I'm like, okay, this is a divine sword of truth, and I'm just going to share it, and it's going to cut away where it needs to cut away. And I take a big deep breath and I breathe into that, and I'm like, here goes. Makes me feel a bit like Wonder Woman. But if you've got some kind of like positive, mental image you can put towards your truth, it really helps you deliver it. And the fallout is necessary, let's say that. Okay, and then the last thing I want to speak about, because I've got an exhaustive list here, is shadow work. And we all kind of have heard this word. When I started using this word 10 years ago within my groups, people didn't really know what I was talking about, and it sounded quite eerie and dark. But now it's mostly a common word that's bandied about in the spiritual realms, particularly, but more about being in my Jungian work. I'm a Jungian student. I love studying Jung, both professionally for like academic accolade, but also for personal growth. And I can honestly say that the shadow work has been my biggest healing journey. And the shadow work took me into all of those things that I've just shared with you. It helped me go into the inner child. It helped me get into my body deeper. It helped me be more truthful. It did all of those things. And so let me get clear what shadow work is. Shadow work is all the things in our personality that we have repressed because we feared that they're wrong, or we're ashamed about, or we're embarrassed about. And what we do is we push them down and down and down into the psyche. No, I wasn't a liar. No, I wasn't a cheat. No, I didn't speak to people terribly. No, I didn't do this. No, I did. All of those that you don't want to go to. And we shove them right down into the body, and they fester. And what they do is they start to bite us outside of ourselves. The shadow begins to to really deal itself in our lives. So I'll give you an example. I had a guy last week that was really being very kind of deceitful in his work, not knowingly, unconsciously. He was kind of skimping a few minutes here and there on breaks. He wasn't being completely truthful about the work he was doing. He wasn't, truthful about the times he was clocking in. This took us a while to get to with him. And what was happening was all around him, he was getting into lots of trouble. Like the work people were sacking him. He was having his wages docked, and he was coming to me saying, all this bad stuff is happening. These bad people are doing all of this to me. And whenever that comes up, I always know there's shadow to explore. So I asked him what part he had to play in it. Well, where was your shadow in this? Why was this negative energy coming in? And he says, well, it wasn't me. It was all the other people. But truthfully, these situations come in to try to direct us into the shadow. We have like dark bits of us. So I will get into kind of disputes with my partner, say, and it's asking me to acknowledge my part of that. What part do I have to have in this unhappiness or this argument? And it would be that I'm maybe acting for my inner child, or that I am not realizing I'm using a voice that's like my father, which is condemning and humiliating. So the best thing to do, and it's not easy, is to look at a person who really bloody triggers you, really gets on your nerves, and write down all the things that gets on your nerves about those people, and then try to find them within yourself. Now, it's really difficult because I clearly did not want to admit many of the things that I saw in that other person in me. But what I began to do was open up to investigating that. And slowly and surely over time, I ticked every single one of those things that I did not like about those people and said, okay, these live within me, and I now need to try to heal them so that I don't attract this in my life. So that's one kind of easy way into the shadow work. But let me tell you this about shadow work. It really is about another helping you. I have had hundreds of hours with an analyst and a psychotherapist that has worked with me to go into the shadow so that they could point out in me the places that I could not see. Because we have this little trickster in our psyche called the ego, and the ego hates to be thought bad of. It hates for you to admit that you're wrong and that you do some really not nice things sometimes. So the shadow work really helps us with that. It helps us catch ourselves out when we are lying to ourselves. And again, this is not all to be done in a way that's condemning. If it's going to be used to condemn yourself and to chastise yourself and to punish yourself, you're not ready for shadow work. You've got to come into a place where you can say, okay, I hold shadow traits and I hold good and I hold bad like everybody else on this planet. And that if we all just looked at our bad stuff, we could actually change it and we could be better. And so it's a really good thing to write things down that you know that are negative attributes about you. So I'm really impatient with people. I'm really an impatient person. And so I make sure that I put myself in situations. Me doing therapy has been brilliant for me as well as other people, because I've had to execute patience. I've had to sit there and say, okay, you need to be patient. This is what you're working at. How dare you work with people and not be patient? And so I want you to feel what those things are, write them down and work with them in a really way that meets them. And Catherine, I love that. She says that she was terrified by the amount of repressed rage 20 years ago. I was there with you. That was what got me into all this work. I was such an angry person. I had a lot of anger inside of me. And imagine if we hadn't touched it, we would still have repressed rage and anger in us dictating our lives. So I decided to come into bodywork for that, to get rid of that. I've used, still, I'm a fire personality, so I hold a lot of anger within my psyche and constantly need to work on that, constant releasing anger because it's quick to spark in me. But I know that, so I can work on it. And when it happens, I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I was really angry. I can say to people, I'm sorry today. I'm really spiky. I'm sorry today. I'm really short tempered. And so, an awareness of these things that you hold really bring you into being a deep, changing person. The people used to tell me I was very harsh. And so I've worked on that. People say, you're so soft and tender and empathetic. Well, I never used to be. Thank God for that. That means like something's moved in me. So I think out of all the work that coming into the shadow work really let me see my inner child. I understood why she was angry and why I was angry because she held so much trauma that had happened to her as a child. I was able to understand why I was attracting certain people in my life. I was able to understand why certain things triggered me. And it really brought in a deeper space of compassion for not only myself, but for other people. So when other people are being idiots, I am like, oh wow, that's like repressed shadow and that's coming out because they've not dealt with it. And oh, I wonder what the wound is under that and whether they've explored their inner child and why that's surfacing right now. And it gives me that place that I can say, like, have you felt into, if they're open to it, I don't go around doing that with everyone, but have you felt into that behavior and why you're doing it and what's trying to be seen there? So these are just a few ways in which we come into healing what gets in the way of it if we're not doing the shadow work, if we're not connecting to the inner child, if we're not allowing our emotions and things to come through. But I want to touch on emotions next week, really, because this is my biggest bag that I work with people into emotional repression and how we move it out the body. So I'm going to be looking at that with you all next week. I really hope that you find these videos informative and useful. I had a feeling that it would be mostly me talking to begin with as I introduce some themes and get the tone and temper of the discussion. And then as it grows, just entering in more to a more discursive kind of situation. I'm trying to air these first few ones on my YouTube page, so there's not like, deeply sensitive information that's coming through. That will happen later on, that they will not be public so that we can go into deeper spaces together. So for now, it's kind of like informative, giving you things to work at, and then it will change as we go on. So really appreciating all of you turning up. You're all obviously truth seekers and soul seekers and spiritual, magnificent ladies. And all of you, those that are watching this as a recording, we hold you in the same energy that we're working in at the moment. And we wish you all deep healing and connection to your soul. So thank you all. And I will see you next week for the next one. Bye for now.